It's interesting you mentioned transit. You arrive here in the midst of a very heated conversation around, once again, the Scarborough Subway extension. Headline in the Globe and Mail this morning in an editorial says, Toronto's transit plan, pay more, get less. The cost of the Scarborough Subway extension, the one-stop subway extension, keeps going up. It's now at about $3.35 billion. That was up from $2 billion last year. Have we written a blank check for this?
No, what we've done is we have taken it to the next step in terms of design and been open about what the cost is based on now at 5% design, soon to head towards 30%, where you are able to sort of be more precise. But I would just say to you, when this cost increase that people are talking about is actually examined, what you find is it has a lot to do with a decision that hasn't even been taken, but has been put on the table by our planning department, not by the subway construction, to either have or not have a below-ground bus terminal. And they're saying it'll be better aesthetically, better for planning if you have a below-ground bus terminal, which has a cost of $187 million. But that has nothing to do with the cost of the subway.
So if it's not a blank check, what is the upper limit?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into citing numbers. I will just say this, that I believe very strongly, first of all, that we've had dramatic underinvestment in transit in Scarborough. This is part of a plan with an express subway to the Scarborough Town Centre, which most people will acknowledge is a logical place to have a transit hub where you have development and retail and office buildings and residences. And it's part of a plan that includes an LRT that will serve a number of neighborhoods and the Scarborough campus, and that I stand by that plan. If we hadn't underinvested in Scarborough dramatically, 5% of the transit stops and 25% of the population, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
At what point, though, would you reconsider? Would it be $3.5 billion?
I will just tell you, I'm not going to get into that
game,
but I will just tell you that this has been approved.
Would it be $5 billion?
This has been approved by the City Council 8 times. 8 times. It's been approved in elections where candidates expressly at all 3 levels of government ran and said we're going to build the Scarborough Subway extension. It's an extension of an existing subway. And so I am saying there's a mandate to do this. One thing you haven't mentioned in talking to me about this morning, nor does the article perhaps refer to it, there was a report accompanying the one you are talking about, embedded in there, that identified at our request, at my request, savings opportunities that could amount to hundreds of millions of dollars depending on the choices you make in building the subway. The price could go down, Matt, if and when we get to the stage of choosing even building materials when we do the design.
All of that is true, but if it's not a blank check, people want to know what the upper limit is. And I think they're curious as to why you wouldn't give a figure around that. When would the city look at saying, you know what, this is too much? The ridership, according to the projections, seems to be going down. The cost, we're at 5% of design, seems to be going up. At what point in time do you reconsider the commitment to the project?
Well, I think what we're doing now is we're refining the cost, and we've identified, which I think people would really want us to do, opportunities to actually reduce the costs. And this is a report written not by cities, public servants, or TTC people or politicians, written by an outside expert firm, a globally respected firm, that says there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars of opportunity to reduce costs, and they've listed them. And now we have to examine those as we go to the next stage of design. So I think there's every reason to believe that we're going to find those savings, and that, in fact, this project will be able to, proceed more or less on the basis that's been described. So that's why I won't get into the game of sort of saying that I expect or hope or think that there's going to be some continued inflation when you start throwing out these numbers.
Will we build it no matter the cost?
Well, again, I'm determined to build it, and I'm determined to keep the cost as low as possible. And I think there are opportunities now identified to actually reduce the cost as it's presently stated. And so I just think it's the right long-term decision to make. And I believe that I won't be sitting here in 25 years. You probably could be. You're young enough. I don't believe people will be having this debate in 25 years. They'll say, what was the fuss all about? Why did it take 9 meetings of City Council to extend a subway to a hub of economic and other activity that gives Scarborough a chance to attract more jobs and investment? Do you realize one of the things when you talk about ridership, that subway station at Scarborough Centre, at the town centre, the day it opens, and it will open, the day it opens, it will be the 3rd busiest on the entire subway system, busier than King and Queen. The 3rd busiest. So when people talk about no riders, they're misleading people. It's going to be the 3rd busiest. People will be pouring onto that subway to be able to get themselves either to downtown or from downtown out to Scarborough to take advantage of the new jobs that will locate there.
What happens to the 17-stop LRT that was promised as part of the subway extension? We don't have the money for it anymore.
Well, we have enough money by the time we finish this project that to have a substantial down payment on it, but that brings us back to what caused you to ask me about transit in the first place, because I mentioned transit in terms of the additional support we need from the federal and provincial government.
But this was the promise that when the compromise that was made would be that there would be the subway and the LRT. We now don't have the money for the LRT.
We have a down payment. We have enough to have a down payment on it, and that's why I'm now working on making sure the other governments step up to support us on all of the Phase 2 projects, which include the relief line and the LRT in Scarborough and the LRT to the west. And so I'm working hard on that. I'm optimistic that in this next Phase 2 of the federal allocation, they will come forward with the money to help support that project. That's going to get built too because we need to do it.
How does this story, do you think, square with the fiscally conservative John Tory?
Well, again, Matt, if you look at this as being a good long-term investment that will attract jobs and investment to Scarborough and make up for, see, everybody is sort of saying they get hung up on this one-stop business. This is an express subway to the Scarborough Town Centre from the existing terminus at Kennedy. And by the way, having gone to Kennedy and reminded myself the other day of the experience you go through getting off the subway and onto the RT and that thing which is old and creaky and at the end of its days, I mean, I don't know how people couldn't understand that this is going to be better to be able to stay on the subway train, ride to the Scarborough Town Centre, which will become a new hub of economic activity and jobs and investment. It will more than pay for itself. And subways are expensive. I concede that point. But it will more than pay for itself. 25 years from now, which is the time frame in which I look at these things, people will be saying, what was the debate about? Why did they wait? Why? And I'll tell you the other thing. If we delay this by changing our mind again, we'll be delaying addressing any transit in Scarborough for years because they haven't even opened the LRT file. And it's not going to happen. I believe it'll be approved by City Council again in 10 days. But I just believe this will be a sound long-term investment for the people of Toronto. I wouldn't support it otherwise. So that's where me, as the person who's experienced in looking at these things, comes into play, and I'm using my judgment to say this is still the right thing to do.
Imagine if we were talking about this in 25 years. That would be an unusual experience. But
well, I'll only be 87, so you'll have to perhaps help me into the chair here, but I'm
sure
happy
you'd
to
be
come back
fine.
and talk to you.
John